All right, we'll get started. Thank you, everybody, as we have more people joining us. Thanks for joining our final virtual event of the application process. My name is Tom Eccleston. I am the Director of Admission, actually Assistant Head of School for Enrollment Management of the Hill School. As you can see, I am also a proud Hill graduate of class of '87. Also a proud Hill dad. Both my daughters have graduated in the last few years and are now in college. But welcome. This is our final event. As I mentioned, we have done 4 of these this year. We're excited that you're joining us tonight. This is sort of a general overview, wrap up of our 4 virtual events. We had a few themed events earlier in the process on athletics and arts and college counseling and academics. And joining me tonight are some other members of the admission team and 2 of our esteemed students at Hill. And I'm going to go around now quickly and have everybody introduce themselves. And again, I'll ask to start, and if you want to start populating that, participants populate the Q&A section with questions, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. We may answer some of them in the Q&A, and then obviously we'll answer some live. And we also, if you would like to raise your hand, please do so, and we will promote you live, and you can ask your question live, and we'll have different panelists answer the questions. So again, welcome. My name is Tom Eccleston, and again, this is just a general themed event. We want to answer any of your questions about Hill, what's going on at Hill today, any of your questions about any of our programs, academics, weekends, advising, teachers, students, arts and athletics, and also obviously the admission process. If you have any specific questions about admissions, and before we wrap up, we'll also make sure that you understand the remaining timeline. So again, I'm going to turn it over and have people start to introduce themselves, and I'll start with Chris Balla.
Good evening, everybody. As Tom said, my name is Chris Balla. I am also a graduate of the school, class of '97. I've been in the admission office for 15 years. I currently serve as a Senior Associate Director of Admission and Director of Financial Aid. I live here on campus in this year, a third form boys dormitory in Fehrenbach House. I've also coached in the ice hockey program for a number of years, served as an advisor, even was a baseball coach way back when. And I've taken a neat step. My son is also enrolled here now, so a current Hill parent. So again, thanks to everybody for joining us, and look forward to the evening together.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Amanda Dougherty, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I'm a Senior Associate Director of Admission here at Hill. I've been here for 20 years. I live here with my husband and my 3 younger kids. I've coached in the field hockey and lacrosse programs, currently a JV lacrosse coach. I advise and do dorm duty in Upper School West, which is a 5th and 6th form boys dorm. But thanks for being here.
All right, Dev Bernard, go ahead, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Devondra Bernard, class of 2014. This is my first year in the admissions office. And on campus, I'm assistant girls varsity basketball coach. I live in Upper School with Kat, and I have a handful of advisees as well.
Thanks, Dev. And Kat Moore, go ahead, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kat Moore. I'm a 6th form boarder from Delaware. I'm a part of the girls lacrosse team as well as the girls soccer team, and I serve as head prefect at Hill.
All right. Last but not least, Noah Toole, go ahead.
How's it going, y'all? I'm a four-year student from Morgantown, Pennsylvania. I serve as the co-president as well as head of tour. And I'm also the varsity captain of boys soccer and boys track and field.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you, everybody. I don't think I missed anybody, and welcome. And again, for participants, if you could start to populate any questions that you have in the Q&A section, we will make sure that they all get answered one way or another. And again, welcome. We're so thrilled that you're joining us tonight. And again, we're just going to review any of your last minute questions here before our admissions deadline comes to us, which is on January 31st is our application deadline. We hope you have some last minute questions, or you have any questions about Hill community, Hill culture, academics, athletics, or the arts. Quickly reviewing, we are now in week 2 of our return from winter break. We are thrilled to be back in session. We are fully back in session, fully masked and attacking COVID as it stands now in our world, but we are moving forward. And again, we've been in classes. We do have some students remote for different reasons based on travel or COVID protocols. But we are moving forward as a community, and we're excited to be back in session. Our athletics and arts are moving forward as well. And as I said, we started classes. This is our second week of classes. We started classes last week, and we've got about another 7 weeks of our winter term. So again, we're very excited. So please start populating that Q&A section so we can get some questions going here. And since we don't have one yet, but I'm going to start off by asking Mrs. Dougherty and Kat Moore to talk a little bit about the advising program at Hill.
Kat, you want to go first? Or you want me to go first? As we're right next to each other.
I know, I just heard you through the wall. I'll go first, and then you
Okay.
can anything that
Go
I
ahead.
like. So the advising program at Hill is actually one of my favorite aspects because, you kind of get, if you're playing sports teams or you're really into a club, you get close with those people. But with advisories, you meet people that you wouldn't necessarily form those closer bonds with otherwise. So I had a really great advisor for my first 3 years at Hill. Unfortunately, she left, so I got the chance to switch. You have the chance to switch every spring if you find a faculty member that you become closer with, but you meet once or twice a week with your advisory. You always have a snack. You talk about life. You talk about school. Your advisor's there if you need help with anything from academics to social life to home life to sports. Even if you just want like a good hug. My advisor always gives me a hug when I'm missing home. And so advisors are kind of like serve as your go-to person. If you don't have another faculty member that you feel like you relate to as well as your current advisor, then you can switch your next year. But I love advisories because I've made some of my closest friends at Hill, different forms in different dorms. So yeah.
Thank you, Kat. And Amanda, maybe from a faculty perspective, the role of the advisor at Hill.
Sure. Kat, that was so well said, first of all. I think for me, what I personally think the advisor does is be that, tough love, but also your biggest cheerleader. And so the faculty, we spend a lot of time together with our advisees, and more so this past, say, 2 years, we've had a lot of meals together, chapel time together, meetings. I've told my advisory, they've kept me together these last few years because we see each other so much. So it's a relationship with the students, but it's also a relationship with the parents. I love using WhatsApp and texting, email with my advisee parents, no matter where they are in the world. And, I hope that they know they can always reach out to me if they need anything. It's a great relationship. And, obviously after now, for me being here long enough, I love seeing my old advisees, talking to them, seeing them start their families. It's just a really rewarding part of living and being a part of a boarding school.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda and Kat. There is, so we're starting to get the Q&A section populated. There's a question about H-term, and no, I'm going to go to you first. So we just had, I guess, our second H-term we had for the 2 weeks in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so Noah, talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the different classes offered and what was that like for Hill students?
Yeah, I think H-term was a great experience for us. It was a lot different from the previous year. And I think we just keep expanding our horizon in the way that we keep getting better with the different classes that we offer. For the classes that I took or was able to take, I worked with the admissions team, especially Miss Bernard. And we kind of were, our typical tour guides, but we also learned about the admissions process on a, more vague or grander scape. And then I also took a class called Economics and Sports. It's something that's kind of brings in the franchises of sports as well as, econ and finance together. So I think it was something that's very experiential and something you wouldn't normally get. I think that a lot of kids enjoyed their time. I know that some international kids were not able to come back for H-term, so they stayed home, but they also did internships. So I think it gives us time to do our own thing, to have fun, especially, but also learn something. So it was a great time to, as well as have sports in the background. So it was really nice.
That's good. Kat, do you want to add anything from a student perspective on your H-term experience?
Yeah, I'll quickly share what 2 courses I took. So I took a poetry workshop, and then I also took an up close and personal in Pottstown. So I kind of had the balance of both worlds, which I loved. I spent half of my day in the classroom listening to my classmates' poems, working with them, going through workshops. We had some guest speakers come in and kind of talk us through that. And I've never been a very creative or artistic person, so I took H-term as this opportunity to try something new and kind of get that other side of my brain moving. And I loved it so much, like I'm still writing poems on my own sometimes just to get out of my head sometimes. So I loved it. And then the up close and personal in Pottstown, we split. The first half, we would go and visit a local nonprofit and kind of learn what they do and how we can help as a school and as individuals. And then for the second half, we would go to a local shop or store and just support local businesses. So I loved it. And I'm sad I won't get it next year because I'll be gone, but it was awesome.
That's great. Thank you, Kat. Mr. Balla, there's a bunch of questions. I know we've answered a few about testing and SSATs. Could you maybe just sort of talk about all of the testing that we do require this year and maybe even late minute testing with February and such?
Yeah, thanks. I was actually seeing that in the Q&A, and I'll try to address a few of the different ones I've seen. So most of the questions right now are about the timing. Obviously, knowing our deadline is coming up. The final national SSAT date is probably February, maybe 6th or 7th, something around there, usually one of the first early Saturdays. If students register for that test date, that score will be turned around in time and sent to us, and that falls within our parameters. There was another question in there about, does the SSAT have to be completed before the interview? That's also not the case. Again, as long as the test is completed and the score is submitted, and the same goes obviously for the ISEE. The PSAT is a little bit different. That would have been completed already for most of our 10th graders out there right now. And then SAT and ACT would have already been done as well. But if we're looking at those SSAT or ISEE scores, to have that done, say the early part of February and reported to our office before, as long as it comes in before the last notification date, March 10th, then our office is able to put that together and consider it as part of your file. Last thing to be said is there are some opportunities for flex tests. So please, families, get onto the SSAT website, dig around in there and see what sorts of options. The SSAT folks, they know that families are trying to get tests completed. So they try to be as flexible as possible, but the quicker or as quickly as you can get that done and get that score submitted to us. And if you have one-off questions, certainly ask at the point of your interview or send a separate email to our office. We're happy to give you advice as best we can.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Balla. Yeah, a lot of questions there about testing as we approach our deadline. A good question in here about in the Q&A about boarding school is new for our family and transitioning sort of for the first time away from home. Ms. Bernard, would you like to take that? And maybe I'll have the kids chime in too as well. But and how do you think Hill is special about handling? For a lot of kids, it's the first time away from home.
For sure, yeah. So for me, almost 10 years ago now, I came to Hill and it was completely new for my family, right? We didn't really know about boarding school. It came on our radar somehow. And me going to Hill in September, I was pretty nervous. But there are so many people, adults, students put in place for you when you are transitioning here, right? So I was living in Rolfe as a new fourth former. But I had my prefects, right, who have been here 3-4 years already. I had Mrs. Dougherty here. She was one of my dorm parents, right? She really made me feel comfortable. I had Mrs. Eccleston, Mr. Eccleston's wife. She was my advisor, right? And she helped me through my transition, right? Learning how to do my work here, learning how to be away from home. So I think that there's so many people, including your advisor, which you talked about earlier, in place for you to help you with that transition. And I think as well, when you first apply into campus, you have your extracurriculars that you're involved in, right? So you already have a group of friends there. You have seated lunch, right? So you're meeting people every single day. So for me, I think it was pretty seamless in that way.
That's great, Dev. And Noah or Kat, do you want to talk a little bit about this? And it's blending in with some other questions just about, maybe even coming from a bigger public school. I know Noah did that and Kat came from a smaller private school, but that initial transition to Hill and how did Hill help?
Yeah, I can answer and then Kat can just fill in the bubbles. But no, I came in, this year is my first year boarding. So I was a day student for 3 years. And like Mr. Eccleston said, I was student coming from public school. So my public school is, fairly large, but the transition was pretty seamless. It wasn't that bad. And I think that it made me more independent, but not because it forced on me on like a negative way. It's just because everyone else wanted you to be independent for your own, greater good. So coming in as a boarder this year, it's not like I've never done my laundry before. It's like you just learn about time management. You learn about, checking in with the adults around just so that they know you're safe, or, going to practice and then hanging out with your friends right at dinner. And then you have a little bit of time to go to the grill or hang out throughout the day. So I think that honestly, I like being a boarder better than being a day student. But no, I think that the transition is pretty seamless and you have nothing to worry about as a boarder.
Yeah, so I think Ms. Bernard and Noah summed it up pretty well. But the one thing that I will add is that you're never the new kid at Hill. No matter what form you come in, there's always someone else in that same boat as you. So you never really feel that pressure of, yes, you're away from home if you're boarding, but there's, countless other people in that same boat that you're in, and everyone around you, like your advisors, like your teachers, your prefects, people on your hall, on sports teams and theater and dance, are there to support you and make sure that you're doing well. And so you never really have to worry about doing that transition on your own, because at Hill, you never are.
Thank you, everybody, for the questions. As you can see, Mr. Ball and Mrs. Dougherty are typing away in the live Q&A as well. And again, I remind you, if you want to raise your hand and ask a live question, we can promote you if you'd like to do that. So feel free. But I love the questions coming in. There's a question in here about college counseling and how does the Hill approach that? And Mrs. Dougherty, I'm going to ask you to maybe start with that from your perspective as a faculty member, and how when we get asked that question, obviously often in the admission office, but how do you feel Hill approaches the college counseling process?
Sure. Well, we've got a fantastic office of college counselors that you do get matched up with basically at the end of your fourth form year. And so you're with them all of your fifth form, sixth form, junior and senior year. But as I often describe to admission families, even my younger, advisees, when we are, say, picking classes in the spring for the following year, sometimes they'll ask me, should I take this class or that class, or AP or honors? And they're always welcome to go in and talk to the college office, anyone in there. So I love when our younger kids also take advantage of academic questions, but also the college office is a great resource even for summer programs and things to do over that time. The college process has looked a little bit different, obviously, these past 2 years. We had been great about having lots of college fairs, college representatives coming on campus, seeing our kids here in their element. That obviously, had to be limited a bit, but you guys still had a couple of fairs this fall with schools. I just think our college office does a great job of knowing our students and helping them realize, the right fit for their next step after Hill.
Noah or Kat, do you want to, if you want, chime in at all, maybe talk a little bit about your college process if you'd like?
Yeah, I mean, my college process has been a little bit different just with athletic recruiting. But I would say, and go on top of Ms. Dougherty saying that they're very hands-on. As soon as I was, given my college counselor, me and Ms. Johnson, we worked day in, day out to kind of talk about what's next in my steps. So that's either working on my essay to get that a little bit better the first time, or scheduling visits to go on campuses. But it's also the fact that they know that I'm kind of doing my own thing with sports. So I kind of fill them in and they give me their honest feedback and they can help. So, my recruiting process for sports has been a little bit longer than I've liked, but they've, helped me with, applying to schools, getting the forms to be able to, go on a visit or something like that. So they've been very hands-on because they honestly want everyone to succeed. They want everyone to be at their college that they want, because, the next steps are your 4 years or whatever. And you want to be happy there. So they understand that. They want to do everything they can to help that.
That's great. All right, there's a question here about what is the daily schedule like? And that's a pretty broad question, but Dev, Bernard, if you could just maybe touch on that, and then Kat, you can maybe elaborate as well. And Dev, maybe talk about, and I'll have Kat, how about Dev, you talk about sort of 8 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and Kat Moore, you can talk about what happens in the afternoons and at night.
For sure, yeah. So classes every day start at 8:25, Monday through Friday. We no longer have Saturday classes. So what that's going to look like, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, for the most part, classes go 8:25 to 3:30. You're going to take a variety of classes. So they might be 45 minutes long, or they could be an hour and 10 minutes long. And we have the longer class periods so you can get more hands-on, right? Say in a science class, or have a longer discussion in English. But for the most part, you're going to take, I believe it's 5 classes a day if they're 45 minutes. And then other days, if you have a long block, it's going to be less. In between classes, there's typically some sort of break, right? So we might have chapel talks that happen on Mondays and Fridays, which when a sixth former or faculty member gives a talk that they think will benefit the community, right? Something that's happened in their life. And then we might have, school meetings. There might be advisor meetings. And then we have seated lunch as well, Monday through Friday. So in between classes, there's always some community time as well. But that's typically what 8:25 to 3:30 looks like, except Wednesdays, which is a half day. So you can do your sports games or extracurriculars as well.
That's great. And then Kat, talk a little bit about, for the students, what does a student's day look like after 3:30 every day?
So after 3:30, everyone kind of goes their own way depending on your afternoon activities. So if you are in the musical for that season, you'll head down to the CFTA, you'll start rehearsal for that. If you're on a sports team, you'll go to that practice. Practices and rehearsals usually start around 4 or so, depending on where your practice is or what available space there is. It usually goes for an hour and a half to 2 hours, again, depending on your team. So say you have practice 4 to 6, 4 to 6:30. And then you have buffet dinner that lasts from 5 to 7:30. So it's a wide range that allows you to go to dinner whenever it works for you. So you can go back and maybe study a little bit before dinner, hang out with friends, stay after practice a little bit. And you go to dinner until whenever you'd like. And then you have check-in at 7:30 in your dorm common room to make sure everyone's there. And after that is when we have 2 hours of quiet hours in the dorm, also known as study hall, where you're open to sit at your desk, go to extra help with a teacher, go to the library, go get a snack from the grill. And that lasts until 9:30 again. And then you have check-in as well. And you are usually in for your dorm that time. So sometimes at 9:30, you'll meet with your whole hall and have family night, maybe watch a movie, have a snack. And then after that, you go to bed, depending on what time you like to go to sleep.
Yeah, we do have lights out for our younger students. So 10:30 for third formers, and for fourth and fifth formers, 11 o'clock. And a perk of being a sixth former is that you have to be in your room at 11, but there's not a lights out. So, but you guys go to bed nice and early, right? Noah and Kat? Good. We're getting more questions, which is great. There's a couple questions in here about community service. What does that look like at Hill? So I'll start with Mr. Bala. You want to just talk a little bit about how Hill approaches community service. There's a lot of different sort of avenues that you can do that at Hill. And Chris, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'll start by saying, Hill is extremely fortunate to be, sort of located in the middle of a town. Oftentimes when students, no matter where they come from, when they attend the Hill School, they feel like residents of Pottstown. It's a really special relationship between our school and our surrounding community. And so when our students are involved in service initiatives, it's not a 30-minute van ride to some other town, right? Kids are literally like walking across the street. And typically service initiatives come in 3 sort of forms. At the base level would be things that every student's going to be involved in. That might be some sort of Pottstown Cares work where we're going in, cleaning up leaves, sweeping streets. All the kids on campus, all the faculty on campus are involved in sort of doing our part and contributing to sort of the good of, or the greater good. But again, whether you love it or not, everybody takes, kind of part there. The second level up might be getting involved in groups or clubs that are civically oriented, that might have a service, component, on a national or even international level. Operation Smile, Habitat for Humanity, things where kids are joining organizations that are sort of already in place and kind of have a larger structure. Or it might be responding to something that's happened in town. A family maybe displaced, from a fire or some floods, or, it's neat to watch our kids kind of rally around that, fundraisers, things of that nature. But again, that's not required of our kids. It sort of takes that kind of second step, kids who want to be involved in those organizations. And then third, I would say is, you can almost be a varsity community service participant here. Kids, while some might be at theater practice in the winter or others, might be at swim practice, kids will elect into our community service program. They will be at a location in our town 3, 4, 5 times a week, giving their time back, right? It takes an incredible amount of passion. It might not be for everybody, but kids can kind of get what they want in terms of, developing their service options and experiences. That said, it's incredibly important at this school that you are prepared when you leave to be a member of a different community. And part of that means giving back. So every student here is going to have that experience. It's just maybe how you want to craft it to be sort of the experience you want, but you certainly have options.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. Noah or Kat, do you want to chime in maybe on any of your community service experiences, whether it was with teams or weekends or in the afternoons?
All right, I can go first, Noah. I've been involved in a few, kind of every level that Mr. Balla just talked about. I'm a member of Operation Smile and Pottstown Cares, and I've worked with Hobart's Run. And the best part about it is it's a commitment, but it's as much of a commitment as you want to make it. So if you're someone who has a busy academic schedule, or maybe you are really into one sport and like to focus on improving in that, you still have time and the opportunities to go into Pottstown, even if it's just like Mr. Balla talked about, if it's our Pottstown Cares Day when you go and you clean up, or maybe you go into support local businesses. So I've just loved being able to dip my toe in it as deep as I want to, when I can and when I can't. So I've loved it. Even my HTM course that I spoke about earlier was titled Up Close and Personal Pottstown, and I learned so much more about it and got closer with our community. So
that's great. Good for you, Kat. Thank you. That was awesome. So there's a question in here about sort of outside sports, Noah, and maybe you can take this first. And someone's asking the question actually about swimming, but as we all know, we have a lot of students who participate in sort of club sports here, and then maybe Mrs. Dougherty or Mr. Balla can chime in too about the Hills, sort of from a faculty standpoint, but a school standpoint rather, of how the Hill wants to support student athletes who want to pursue a club sport. But Noah, you want to maybe address that a little bit?
Yeah. So I think that, like Mr. Eccleston was saying, we, as in the Hill School, want to support people doing outside sports. With COVID, being an outside factor or whatever, I know that I've had multiple times where I've, had to go home on the weekends for an outside sport, or just, as a day student, I had outside sports that I had to go. It's all about communication, I think. So as long as you communicate with your, club or your teachers or your coaches, then it's perfectly fine. Just in the time being, I know that there's a lot of guys who are on the basketball team who will end up doing AAU basketball in the spring. So they might, work and do another sport that's not as time consuming, so that they can, give into this, like the Hill atmosphere, as well as their outside club. And it just all depends on your sport and your level of sports that you want to do. But I know that the teachers, as long as you're communicating with them, like I said, they're really helpful in, getting you missed work. But I know that if you're getting into the Hill School, if you're going to the Hill School, then you're more than capable of the time commitment of sports and academics. So you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Thank you, Noah. That was good. And I think I'll speak on the school's behalf. I think we have there is a supportive approach from the athletic department and other departments too. I mean, we have a boy who leaves every weekend to play in the New York Conservatory. So whether it's pursuing passion in the arts and music, and a lot of times it does center around athletics, we want students to do that, and the school is supportive of it. But at the same time, we want our students to take responsibility and make sure that they're getting their work done. And, Noah's nodding and knows that, we don't want students to miss a lot of class time, but we will be supportive of them pursuing their passions and outside interests. And I think there's a really good balance there. And that's where the advising comes in. And, there's such close relationships here between the faculty and students that we really do know where the students are in terms of what they're pursuing on the outside. So some more great questions here. And thank you, Noah, for that. I was looking for a question. Here it is right here. Sorry, I'm going through all these questions. Dev, as an alum, what is your take on this question? how does the alumni network at Hill work? And how does the school help in keeping the network robust? How would you answer that question?
For sure, yeah. There are a lot of different, I would say, avenues that alums can be a part of, right? So we often have get-togethers, right, per city, right? So we might have a New York City alumni get-together, open to all alums any year. Philly, Baltimore, same thing, right? So there's things like that. We have Facebook groups. I'm in the class of 2014 Facebook group that we all keep in touch with. Same thing with our alumni and development office here. They help put things like that together. And I believe almost every class as well has class representatives to do events like that. So you can keep in touch as much as you want. We have a motto called Ties Never Sever, and I think that's pretty spot on. I still keep in touch with a lot of kids who I went to school with. Whether I've seen them yesterday or haven't seen them in 5 years, it still feels comfortable. So I think Hill does a good job with that, whether it's in the alumni development office or whether it's with our class representatives or on these Facebook pages and get-togethers, for sure.
That's great. Thanks, Deb. That's great. Mrs. Dougherty, Amanda, there's a good question in here about how does the school communicate with parents, just throughout the year in terms of progress reports, grade evaluations, and are there parent-teacher conferences? Sort of that general question that we often get.
Sure. I feel like that question often starts in the admission process because kids are used to having, and parents are used to having those different programs at their school where they can check their grades every single day. And Hill does not have that. And I still think it works well. I mean, we're on a trimester system. Kids get grades roughly 6 times a year. I always say, if you ask my advisees how they're doing in a class, they know exactly how they're doing. But if you really want to know, you can ask your teacher. So parents can see their grades 6 times a year. They get teacher comments a certain amount of times. They get advisor comments, dorm parent comments, extracurricular comments, and they're spaced out throughout the year. So I feel like there's a lot of communication. In my time at Hill, I feel like we've done a better job of doing more of it. And then also obviously just being like always open and ready to talk to an advisee parent or dorm, someone in my dorm or something else, how I'm connected to them if the parent has questions for me. So both very prescribed, but also very organic. However, I feel like we want to meet people where they need it. So if you need a little more help and contact, that the faculty advisor will definitely be able to do that for you.
That's great. Great answer. And it's an important question, I know, for parents. Okay, what are the weekends? A new question. What do the weekends look like at Hill? And Kat Moore, I'm going to have you start off with this and then maybe have Mr. Ballard chime in. But Kat, what from a student perspective, talk a little bit about what the weekends look like here at Hill.
So weekends at Hill, you can kind of make to what you want them to be. If you are a part of a sports team, you tend to have a game on Saturday. That could be home or away. And besides that, you don't really have much of a commitment on the weekend unless you are part of a club that's doing something or going on a field trip somewhere. The school offers trips either to KOP, which is our local mall, or to grocery stores in the area, Target, even to Trader Joe's if there's a request for that. You can go to our Student Life Association if there's a specific store or location or somewhere you want to hike, a pond you want to fish at, somewhere you want to swim. And if there's a good group of people that want to do that, you can get that together and that could be an event for the weekend. So we usually get an email around Wednesday or Thursday from our Student Life Association telling us kind of what's on the calendar for the weekend. And you can sign up for trips or just on-campus activities. And it's a lot of fun because you get to do different things.
Mr. Ballard, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's great, Kat. I think for the students out there, it's easy when you start considering a school like Hill to start seeing lots about academics and lots about excellence and lots about work and lots going on. But it's really important to remember that this is a place we want you to have fun, right? And that's a lot of the times, what those weekend activities can be about. It's about being a kid. And you can do all the activities that Kat talked about, or you can sit in your room if you need a little bit of break and, watch some movies and hang out and, catch up and call home. Like you can make those weekends, like she said, kind of what you want. But again, what you'll remember, and I think maybe I can speak for the alums on the call and even for Ms. Dougherty too. She attended another boarding school. You remember the relationships and the fun times you had, and weekends, like I said, are a great time for that to happen.
That's great. All right, I'm going to steal this question from Mr. Lehman, who does these, and but it is a good one. Hill is definitely a school full of traditions and a traditional culture. So I want to go around and have everyone talk a little bit about what their favorite tradition is at Hill, and you can't repeat someone's answer. So I'm going to let the students start first, so they get to choose first. And Noah, since you raised your hand, I'm going to have Kat go first. So anyways, I want everyone to share, because again, there are so many wonderful and fun traditions at Hill, and I do think this is great to share this with the audience. Go ahead, Kat, you start.
So my favorite tradition at Hill centers around Elville weekend. And for those of you who don't know, Lawrenceville is our big rivalry school. But not just the weekend, more specifically the Friday night of that weekend when we have a big bonfire. And sixth formers, there's usually 10 of us, depending on how many. You kind of get to light a torch and walk it, and you get to place it onto the big bonfire, and it grows. And it's kind of like the beginning. It's the beginning of the end, in a sense. For your senior year, you kind of start to get that sentimental feel because you're lighting the fire as a form, and all the underformers are there with you. And even as an underformer, I know that's when I went and I was like, it feels like Hill in that moment, because you're all together and you're all singing a song. You take pictures. It's a fun time. And so I've always loved that, because it feels like a family in that moment.
That's great. All right, Noah, go ahead.
Yeah, Kat kind of took my favorite one, but I feel like it's everyone's favorite. But I would say my second favorite tradition here at Hill is our seated meals. When I take families on tours, that's like one of the first stops that we end up seeing. And it's just a very, humbling and like appreciative experience every time I walk in there. And I just, love the atmosphere that it gives off, as well as when everyone's in there, all, like 600, 700 of us that are in there, like faculty, staff, and students. We have one time to eat together. You're either with your, co-curricular sport or activity, or, random like with the other students, if you don't do something like that during the season. But you're just there at the one time. The headmaster or the SGA co-presidents will make an address before or after the meal. We'll pray together, and then we just have fun time, a fun 45 minutes or 35 minutes of talking, catching up, a break in the day. And I think it's really nice that we do that to bring our community closer.
That's great. That's awesome. Thank you, Noah and Kat. All right, Devondre Bernard, Miss Bernard, what was your favorite Hill tradition?
Yeah, I just want to say Kat almost had me crying with her answer just now. There's so many emotions, Kat. And then Noah, you saw my answer, but then I'm gonna go with family nights. So family nights happen every Tuesday night. And what that is you're with your hall in your dorm as well as your dorm parent, right? So I have the second floor of upper school, and every Tuesday I'm bringing snacks. I'm doing some sort of activity with the girls in my hall. And it's just a great way to bond and form relationships, because I think dorm life is one of the most important parts about boarding school, right? Is being in the dorm and having those relationships. And I think to be able to do that with your dorm parent as well is one of the coolest things. So yeah, I would say family night.
All right, Mrs. Dougherty, you're next.
Okay. We've had some time to think about this, right? Because to me, the things we miss the most are some of the things we haven't been able to do, and it makes it even more like meaningful. So our alumni weekend did come to mind, but I actually think the thing that I sort of miss the most is actually like our advisee dinners when they come over to our houses. And I think I miss it, being a faculty member at a place like Hill. One of the coolest parts about it is my own kids, loving the big Hill kids. And, when Tuck, my first grader, wants to play Mario Kart with Mackenzie Smith, my sixth form advisee, like that's awesome, right? So I feel like we've all kind of missed out on those fun little things, just having them over in our house and eating and hanging out and playing games and just like getting to know each other even better. And we've kind of missed out on that a little bit. So I'm excited to, hopefully the weather will get better. We'll be able to do more things back outside again. And you can play Nintendo Switch anywhere. So we'll be back to it soon enough.
That's great. All right, Mr. Bala.
Yeah, all great. I'm going to go with something that sometimes gets lost because it happens in front of us every single day. And it's our academic dress code. Dress code at Hill, is something that sort of, said earlier, the school is a serious academic institution, and our kids dress the part during the day. So for boys, coat and tie; for our girls, blazer and a blouse and a skirt or a dress or what have you, a couple different variations. But our dress code is something where we've stuck to it. I hope we don't get away from it ever. We do have some other days where we relax dress code because of the weather and things like that. On weekends, kids are dressing as they want. But to piggyback off something that Kat said in terms of Lawrenceville weekend, it's so cool to see our kids on a day full of sports, out around either our campus or Lawrenceville's campus, dressed in our blazers. Our kids kind of bring that, they bring that attitude, that mentality, to that day as well. But yeah, for me, favorite tradition is definitely dress code.
That's great. Those are all great answers. Doesn't leave me with much, but I'll say that chapel, which is, I've always said that there are sort of two majestic buildings on campus, the dining hall and the chapel, that I think are the centerpieces of our community in terms of buildings, but also just in terms of our culture. And it's been a long-standing tradition at Hill. We have chapel twice a week. We are a non-denominational school. All of the students are in there together. And I've always said the focal point of chapel is the chapel talk. And it's typically reserved for sixth formers who are seniors, some faculty once in a while. But I think, there's some great memories made in there because our sixth formers are putting themselves out there to the entire community. And the messages that they share with each other, I use the word brave. It's brave. And a lot of the messages are, sometimes they're funny, but most of the time they're pretty serious. And it's really just personal stories that people want to share and personal life lessons that they want to share with the rest of the community. So, and I know Kat and Noah, who have been around for a few years, have witnessed many great ones. And again, and I use the word brave. I just think it's so commendable of our kids to put themselves out there and share something that, people may not even know about them or their family or their background. And again, we all can learn from each other. And I've always said the greatest part of boarding schools is learning outside of the classroom. I think the academics take care of themselves in boarding schools, but it's being surrounded by incredible kids at Hill, like this year, for instance, from 31 states and 31 countries. And, and I know Noah and Kat probably feel the same. That's the richness of the experience here, is sitting at a dining room table or sitting in chapel and listening to your classmates put themselves out there. That's pretty special. Here's sort of an interesting question. Which does the Hill value more, the student's development potential or current? So I think, I don't know if that's how that's worded, but the student's development potential or current sort of potential. So does anyone want to take a swing at that and where they feel Hill develops, or where they say Hill values rather, sorry.
Yeah, I'll start, Tom. I mean, we see it in our process. That's what we do, right? That's why we ask students to fill out applications and have interviews and hear from teachers, is we're trying to get a full snapshot. I really, and I'm not trying to kick the can here, but I don't think there's more of one than the other. Okay, let's be serious. The kids who are applying to Hill School are all teenagers, and they come in different shapes and forms and different, spots in their development. I think we see both in our process. And I think one of the neater parts of what we do is when, we make decisions, right? And so for, Dev and Amanda and Tom, we sit in rooms and we read files, and we see something in the kid and we make that decision. Then we see it play out, 2 or 3 years down the road. And listen, sometimes it takes a little bit of time, right? We might think we're going to see something in the kid and, they get to campus and we're like, oh my gosh, geez, it doesn't have to be linear, right? Kids are going to have great days. They're going to have down days. Again, that's the nature of kids. You're developing and growing, and to do it in an environment like this allows both of those things to show. The things you love to do that we see in an application that we know a kid's going to impact our community. And then, wow, out of left field, some other talent emerges or something that we weren't sure of. So it's probably one of the more rewarding pieces, if I'll speak to it as an admissions professional. If we talked about favorite traditions, just something that I just love about the job is seeing, things come out of kids that maybe we got a hint of, or maybe we didn't see it all, right? We don't have a crystal ball, but that growth that kids go through. And I could chuckle back thinking about third form Cat Moore, or third form Noah Toole, and, who they were when they showed up on this campus, and the tremendous young adults they've turned into and leaders on our campus. It's an amazingly rewarding facet. So, it's a long answer to a short question, but it's something that we benefit from and enjoy in our admission process.
Dev, as a young alum and coming back to Hill, do you want to, maybe elaborate on that a little bit and what your take is on that question?
For sure. Sorry, I just started reading another question and then can you repeat that for me?
Yeah, no, it was about Hill's seeing the potential in students, the current potential or future potential.
For sure. Yeah, I would agree with Chris in that I think that you see both in the admissions process, right? Like you see what a student has to offer in that current moment. But I'm gonna bring up Mrs. Eccleston again, Mr. Eccleston. But I think when I was, had my down days, like Mr. Bala just said, she really, picked me up and told me, what I can do and what she sees me becoming. And so I think that Hill does a good job getting that potential out of you, right? And seeing you grow and helping you to grow in that way. And I think I know that I grew a lot at Hill. Prepared me for college twofold. I was looking at my peers around who didn't get to have this experience, and I was, so far ahead in that way because of my down days at Hill and because of the people who helped bring me up. So I think Hill does a good job seeing both and putting you in the positions to recognize that potential and to grow into it for sure.
All right, this next question is for Kat and Noah, and we actually asked this on our sixth form exit surveys we did for years, but I always thought it was a great question. And I'll start with you. What would you give, advice would you give to sort of the fourth form Noah entering Hill that, looking back now that you're an experienced veteran, and Kat, will be the same question for you. And, sort of what didn't I do as an entering third or fourth former? And, what advice would I give to that person, 3 years prior?
I think that the one thing I tell my little brother, he's a third former, but for any younger student, I just say, just breathe. Your time here is short, but you just have to take it one day at a time. You can't get too stressed over, a certain test or a quiz or, a friendship or whatever. You are going to be fine. And I see that now that once I just took a breath and just looked at what do I have next? What do I have next? What do I have to look forward to? What am I grateful for? It was just being in a more positive space and kind of being grateful that I'm here in the first place, kind of grounding myself. But I know that, like I said, your time here is short, but coming in as a sophomore or a fourth former, you're just like, you're in the middle of your high school experience. You're still young, but you're older than your, last year's self. So I think it's just taking the time to put in the work in the classroom, put in the work in your extracurricular, whether that be sports or, musical or, anything else, as well as just, get closer with your peers. They're going to be, a little bit closer than most people who went to public school and they go to their, high school reunions and they're not as close. But I think that Hill is in the way, like most people would say, is like college. You get close with those people. You kind of see your boarding students in summer, like you might go visit them. So I think it's just more about breathing, not getting too tripped up over anything, and just taking it day by day.
Thank you, Noah. Kat, any advice, not to so much applicants, but again, to new students who will be entering, as Noah just gave his advice, to entering a boarding school or entering Hill, in September as a third former?
Yeah, so last year I was lucky enough to be a prefect, so I kind of was similar to an RA, so I lived with third form girls. And something I found myself telling them a lot was along the lines of, it can't hurt, whether that be trying a new class, going to dinner with someone new, going to an activity you weren't necessarily comfortable with. And I wish I had someone telling me that when I first came into Hill, because oftentimes we get very set in our comfort zones and, the people we talk to and what we like to do. And when you're at a place like Hill, where there are so many opportunities for you to try something new, whether you end up liking it or not, you can, like I said earlier, you can dip your toe in as deep as you'd like to. And that's just something that I always reminded my girls last year. If they're like, well, I want to go on this trip, but I don't really know if anyone else is going on it and I'm nervous. And my response would always be just, if you want to do it for you. It can't hurt. It really can't hurt. Doesn't matter who else is doing it. If you've never done it before, if you know no one, if you're uncomfortable, but it really can't hurt to try something new, say hi to a stranger, sit at a different table. So that's what advice I'd give to anyone entering any boarding school at any form.
That's great. Do any of the admissions officers want to chime in on that? If you want to, you don't have to, but you're welcome to. We're good. All right. Well, we've answered 49 questions. So that's a lot of questions, and I appreciate all these questions. I'm just going to quickly review the timeline and just the remainder of the process and just send out some reminders. But it's January 13th, I believe. So I know a lot of other boarding schools, their deadline is the 15th. So our deadline is not until January 31st. So just a reminder on that front. But again, I know when you're applying to other schools and there's so many common applications out there, I know we'll be getting a lot of your applications in the next day or so, but we look forward to reading them. But again, January 31st application deadline. The financial aid deadline is January 15th. And again, Mr. Bala, who is the Director of Financial Aid, you can reach out to him if you have any specific questions in regards to financial aid. We will notify you on March 10th. So that, for anyone who knows, that is the big day in the boarding school world. And all of the boarding schools share that common date. Again, you will hear from us. Make sure you have opened up an account on our online portal, and that will allow you to view your decision on March 10th. We get back from spring break at the end of March, and we're planning on, before COVID, you could visit classes and do all those great things. But we will be having some sort of revisit day program. We'll probably be doing what we're calling touring days. So we'll invite students and families to come back for tours, see the campus. We have been open all year for tours, and so we've been blessed to meet a lot of you on campus. We are now under tighter restrictions, so if you do want to visit in the next 2 weeks, we do have tighter restrictions in terms of the visit protocols. But we will have some type of tours in late March, early April, and we'll do some online events too to those who have been accepted to Hill. And you have to make your decision by April 10th if you do so get accepted. So. But I think that wraps it up. Mr. Bala, Mrs. Dougherty, Ms. Bernard, anything from your end in terms of the admission process reminders? Well, this has been a great last event. We had great questions, great turnout. And again, we've had 50+ questions here. And Noah and Kat, you guys were great. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys, they're rock stars in our office. Great tour guides and great members of our community. But thank you all for joining tonight, and please reach out to us. We don't have many interview spots left open until the deadline, so if you have yet to interview, I would sign up ASAP online. But again, we have very few spots remaining before our 31st deadline. But we look forward to reading your applications, and good luck for the remainder of this process. Thanks, everybody.